The British operation to airlift thousands of Afghan and UK citizens out of Afghanistan is winding down, with UK troops about to begin their withdrawal. Boris Johnson admits not all those civilians eligible to leave can be airlifted out, but he insists the government will do whatever it can to help those left behind. It follows yesterday's suicide bomb attack at Kabul Airport, with the number of dead, according to a health official, rising to more than 170. It's also been revealed that 2 of those killed were British nationals, along with the child of another British citizen. Our correspondent in Kabul, Secunder, Kermani, has the latest and a warning his report contains distressing images.
Distraught relatives search Kabul's morgues looking for their loved ones.
This baby you managed to save? Yeah. But there's another baby.
Amongst those killed, Mohammed Niazi, a taxi driver from London who had travelled to Kabul to try and help his family get inside the airport. His eldest daughter and youngest child are still missing. His wife was also killed. His brother was at the airport alongside him.
I saw some small children on the river. It was so bad. It was doom day for us.
Many of those we meet say their relatives weren't killed in the blast, but by firing in the confusion afterwards. They believe by foreign soldiers.
Somehow I saw the American soldier, and beside this there were Turkish soldiers. So the fire come from the bridges, like the towers.
From the soldiers?
Yeah, from the soldiers.
America's Department of Defense didn't reply to our request for comment. The suicide bombing claimed by the Islamic State group would have ripped through the densely packed crowd, causing panic. IS has repeatedly launched devastating attacks in the city. The blast has left 2-year-old Mohammad Reza fighting for his life. This looks set to be one of the deadliest incidents ever in this horrific conflict. So many of the victims, those who had worked with the international community. Noor Mohammed had been employed alongside American forces.
The guy has served US Army for years. And the reason he lost his life. He wasn't killed by Taliban, he wasn't killed by ISIS. US Army started shelling.
How can you be sure?
Because of the bullet. The bullet went inside of his head, next to right here, near to his ear. He doesn't have any injury.
These are Noor Mohammed's 8 children. He had hoped to give them a better life. Instead, this afternoon, they said a final goodbye.
Those killed in this awful attack were trying to escape years of violence in Afghanistan. Instead, they became the latest victims in a country torn apart by bloodshed.
Tens of thousands of people have been flown out of the country, but now only foreign nationals are being allowed inside the airport. The British government has acknowledged some of those who want to leave will be left behind, like this former interpreter.
There is no place for us to stay, and we are so worried about our future. I think it's not fair. It's like a betrayal of their own heroes.
These are the last days of a chaotic evacuation effort. For those who haven't made it out, a deeply uncertain future. Secunder, Kermani, BBC News, Kabul.
Let's talk to our chief international correspondent, Lyse Doucet, who's live in Kabul for us tonight. Lyse, there are reports tonight that the Taliban are already making moves on the airport.
Yes, and making a huge statement about it as well. It seems like in the same way that Taliban fighters stole a march suddenly on Kabul last week, they're doing the same tonight at the airport. For the past few hours, we've been watching on social media as senior officials among the Taliban and their supporters are posting photographs with exclamations like the foreign occupation has ended, the Islamic Emirate is entering the airport, pictures of luxury vehicles, their lights blazing, going into the airport grounds. So, of course, we checked with the Pentagon. They say we still control the gates. We still control the operation. The MOD in London says the military flights are continuing, but it underlines again, it is just a matter of time. But such is the desperation of those who got so close and now feel they may lose out. I'm even receiving messages tonight. A friend said, my sister got a message, an email tonight saying she can go to the airport. How can you get her there? And people there showing passports, and their Afghan passports, and saying, how can we get there? This door is closing and closing loudly, but other windows are going to open. But will they be open enough?
Indeed. OK, Lyse, thank you. Lyse Doucet there live in Kabul. Well, as the Western military presence ends in Afghanistan over the coming days, the focus will turn to how to engage with the Taliban regime. Our correspondent, Caroline Hawley, looks at the diplomatic challenges that lie ahead.
For 2 decades, the West fought these men. Now they're calling the shots, and Western leaders must work out the best way to deal with them, so they cause the least harm in power.
I think there is absolutely no choice but to develop channels to communicate with them at senior level over how they're now going to run Afghanistan.
What leverage does the West, does the UK have now?
I think in reality, our leverage is very limited. We can withhold recognition, but I'm not sure how much the Taliban care about that. We can, as the Foreign Secretary has hinted, withhold aid, and Afghan monetary reserves are mostly held and frozen in American banks, so we can withhold money. But the risk with that is that it mainly impacts on the Afghan people who are facing a bleak future anyway.
The UN says millions of people were already on the brink of famine before the Taliban takeover. The ousted government of President Ghani was almost entirely dependent on foreign funding. As much as 75% of state spending came from the outside world. That helped pay for everything from security forces and government officials to schools that offered many girls an education for the first time, and hospitals and healthcare. Now the Taliban are in charge. Who's going to pay the bills? Could Western aid with strings attached moderate the militants? Or will they now look elsewhere for support? Earlier this week, the Taliban proudly tweeted a photo of themselves meeting the Chinese ambassador. Both China and Russia still have embassies in the capital.
The difficulty with using economic leverage is that it only works if the target of your leverage has no other options. And in this case, the Taliban does have the option of looking to the regional countries for support. And those countries, China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, are likely to be more flexible in their expectations of the Taliban.
Terror of the Taliban, fears for the future have prompted a desperate rush to escape. The UN warned today that 500,000 Afghans could flee the country this year alone. And Europe fears a repeat of the refugee crisis in the Mediterranean in 2015. The West can leave Afghanistan, but can't walk away from its problems. And there are no easy options now for how to respond. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.